What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Revival. My name is JJ, and I want to know, how do you feel about DLC and expansions? So, what made me think of this, it's something I think about all the time, but like the main reason was I recently finished my playthrough of Dark Souls 2 with Adrian, and we were at the end of the game, and he was like, before we finish it, why don't we knock out the expansion bosses, or DLC bosses, and I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not? First of all, they were way tougher than anything else in the game, which is crazy. But we went to one of them, and we tried several times, over and over again, kept dying. It was crazy, with two of us. And I was just kind of like, I don't even care. Like, it's just, I just don't even care. We eventually did get one of them down, and the other one was also tough, and I was just kind of like, I just don't care, and I don't want to do it, but I think if we get like another person or two, we'll go back and try it again. But I was just like, I just want to beat the game and be done with it and finish it. And part of that was probably the frustration that went along with it. But at the same time, like I was thinking about it, and I was talking to him about this as well. Like, I really don't tend to go back to a lot of games when like DLC gets released and stuff. Like, perfect example. I mean, I'm a massive Final Fantasy fan, obviously. I love the series. Every single game has something to offer. I think there's something in it for everybody, and I could list 1,000 ways, as to why it's my favorite series in the world. I still have not even touched any of the DLC on Final Fantasy 15. I do plan on going back to it and doing it, but I just haven't. I platinumed the base game when it first came out, and I did everything, but I have not even gone back to do any of the extra stuff that came out, and that's the story stuff, with the character missions and all that. I haven't touched it. Haven't done anything. I was trying to like rationalize why I do that or don't do that, I should say. And I think it's coming from like being a gamer from such an early age and growing up in the 80s and 90s. When you've got your game that gets released on a cartridge or disc or whatever, and it was the whole game. It was the complete package. Everything was right there. So if you did everything in that, you were done. You finished it. If you wanted to come back and play it again, you knew what you were getting into and all this stuff. Don't get me wrong, and I'll touch on this a little more later. I'm not saying DLC and expansions and stuff are bad. This is just, I think, why I tend not to go back to them. I just think I grew up on that complete experience and never needing to go back to these games. The Witcher 3, I played through, the base game, loved it, my number 5 game of all time. But I didn't go back to the 2 expansions that came out until like 2 years later. It was a long time before I went back to that, and then I did, and I was like, this is awesome, and I remember why I love this game so much. But I tend not to really even touch on that stuff. If I hear that something's coming out, like, I just don't tend to do it. The best way for me to get into DLC and that kind of thing is to have a game that's been out for a while, and then they do like a package deal with everything all together. If Final Fantasy 15 had come out with all that stuff at the same time, I guarantee you I would have done all the extra stuff already. But the fact that I beat the base game and haven't loaded it back into my console is... I just haven't felt the need to do that. I do want to again, but I just haven't. I'm curious as to what other people think. I get the argument of some people want to stay in these worlds and keep expanding upon it and have all these extra things to do and have a reason to come back and play these games because they don't want to come back and play the same game over and over and over again. I get that. in the end, though, when it's all released and you have all the DLC and everything, isn't that what you're just doing anyway? You're just playing the whole thing over and over again, regardless. So I don't know. I would just prefer that it all got released at the same time and just give us one game, and that's that. And that's just, again, a personal preference. Obviously, this doesn't include, like, MMOs and that kind of stuff that has, like, living, breathing worlds. I would include, like, Animal Crossing and that kind of thing as well. Games that, like, have things that are constantly evolving, games that utilize servers where you have to connect to online, a lot of online stuff. I would say are games that almost need it in some ways. But as far as, like, single-player experiences go, I'm just not super crazy about DLC or expansions or anything like that for the most part. They're fine. I just don't get as excited about them as some other people seem to. Mass Effect, perfect example. Again, I played through all 3 of those and I did all the extra stuff, but it was because I didn't play it until years later after the whole trilogy was out, and they had the Mass Effect collection on PS3, which included all the DLC. I think there was like maybe 1 or 2 things on Mass Effect 3 that wasn't included. And I liked it so much that I did end up getting those. So that's an example there where I caved immediately. But I generally tend not to really look at DLC and stuff. And that includes, again, Final Fantasy 15, games that I love. I just would prefer to get everything at once so I can just dive in, get immersed. And a lot of times it comes down to remembering what the hell is going on. Like, if I play a game and I keep bringing it up, but Final Fantasy 15, if I go back into it now and I just want to go and I want to play those expansions, I've only beaten the game 1 time. I may not really remember the context of what these additional stories are supposed to be in, the controls for the combat. I'll have to relearn those and everything. I'd rather just have it all at the same time. That way I can keep my mind focused on this one thing. And this, that might also play into why I've talked about this before. I tend to not play more than 1 game at a time because I like to be immersed and sucked into one world, and not, switch back and forth. And again, just personal thing. So I'm curious as to what people think about that kind of stuff. And obviously, there's the argument for the cash grab and that kind of thing. And if it's a full-on expansion, like, I think those are kind of a case-by-case basis as far as whether they should be charged for or not. I would argue, honestly, like in the case of The Witcher 3, those, at least the one of the expansions, the Blood and Wine, that was like a full game in and of itself, because it added like a whole new area. I would pay for that, not like $60 full game price, but I would pay $10, $15 for something like that to be added on. But for the most part, like, just have it included in the beginning, from the start. I prefer it that way. I'm not like adamant one way or the other. That's just, I think, again, like I said, being a retro gamer and somebody who grew up with games as complete. I'm curious as to what, like, if any of you are younger, and you grew up with, like, the games that you grew up with all had, not all, but it had a lot of those options where it was like you'd get it and then you would have the option to download some extra content and everything like that, or pay for some extra content. And so you're kind of used to it, and that's what you know. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are, and obviously other people who grew up the same time frame that I did. I just, it's something that it really, really struck me when I was doing the thing with Adrian, because I was like, I was originally like, yeah, let's beat all the bosses, let's do it. And then as soon as I heard the term DLC, I was kind of like, oh, these are optional. Oh, these are not. I don't know that I want to do these. All right, we'll try them. Oh, they're really tough. I don't care that much. And I kind of just didn't. So I don't know. We'll see if I end up going back to that one. I still have the game installed on my PS5. So if Adrian, I know you're watching this, if you and Billy want to hop back in and get the other stuff down, you just let me know when you want to do it, and I'll do it. But as far as, like, for me, like, being adamant about having to do this stuff, it just, I tend to just kind of, like, shy away from the extra content if it's not included in the base game. So yeah, so let me know what you guys think. I'm curious. It's a fascinating topic to me. And again, as far as payment for that kind of stuff, I think it's definitely a case-by-case basis. Some DLC, some expansions are absolutely worth it, in my opinion. Some of them, I don't think they should be paid for. So, yeah, let me know. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know the drill. And as always, keep on gaming.